Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 3 of the 2017 Norway Chess tournament. Round 3 saw the big clash between world champion Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura, one of the tournament leaders, Nakamura from the USA. Of course, world champion Magnus Carlsen is a very difficult opponent for anybody, but it was especially like that for Nakamura, who lost 12 games without winning one. Of course, they also had a number of draws, but Nakamura was not able to beat Magnus Carlsen until the Bilbao tournament in Spain from 2016, when he finally made it 12-1. Let's see what happened in this encounter. Carlsen white, Nakamura black played on the 8th of June 2017. e4, c5, Nakamura plays the Sicilian. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3, and a6, which is the Najdorf variation of the Sicilian. h3 is one of the many possibilities on the 6th move, g6 and g3. These moves look very strange, h3 and g3. But the setup with g3 is a normal way to play against the Najdorf, and often h3 fits into that system. Knight c6, bishop e3, bishop g7, bishop g2, both players castled, and knight d7, which was criticized by Nigel Short in the broadcast. He said this is an artificial move, and half tongue-in-cheek he said, don't play with the same piece twice in the opening. He asked Nakamura about this move after the game, and Nakamura said it was the best move and that his plan is simply to exchange on d4 and play b6 and bishop b7, more or less no matter what white decides to do. Carlsen played b3, and afterwards said that he had not seen Nakamura's idea, which I just mentioned, and we're going to see that idea in action now. Nakamura took on d4, bishop takes, and took on d4 again. Queen takes, b6 as planned, knight d5, bishop b7. Carlsen played c4 and e5, hitting the queen. Carlsen played the queen back to e3, and now Nakamura played b5 and said afterwards that he could have gone for bishop takes d5 straight away, and he showed this variation: c takes d5 and then a5. Then white wants to play a rook to the open file, but he has to make sure he plays the correct rook. He has to play rook ac1, because if he plays rook fc1, then there is a trick based on the a4 move. Knight c5 is then what Nakamura would have played, and then the standard way to kick away a knight from c5 is to do that with a3 and b4. But if Carlsen would have done that, a3, then there is that trick with a4, because if you now play b4, then there is knight b3, and both rooks are forked, and black is better. But Nakamura decided not to go for bishop takes d5 straight away. He played b5, rook ac1, b takes c4, rook takes c4, and only now did Nakamura take on d5. He said he also thought about the move a5, but was a bit worried about knight c7 and was not sure what was going on here, to quote Nakamura. So he decided to take on d5, e takes d5, and a5. And Magnus Carlsen's comment after the game was that during the game he thought this looked insanely risky for black. He played rook fc1, knight c5, and Carlsen is going to kick that knight away. a3, and here comes Nakamura on the other side of the board with his counterplay f5, with the idea to push the pawn up further. That pawn was called a battering ram by Grandmaster Nigel Short in the broadcast. b4 from Carlsen, a takes, and the knight went back to d7. Nakamura showed that f4 straight away does not work, because g takes f4, e takes f4, the queen just goes to f3, the knight has to be saved, so knight d7, and then rook takes f4, white is just a pawn up, and black lost his battering ram pawn. So he did not go for that, he played knight d7, and here's an important moment in the game. Carlsen played rook c6, which looks very logical, but he really should have played b5, a move he had seen, and Carlsen said that he really regrets he did not play b5, and that he had no idea why he didn't go for it. White prevents black's f4 counterplay, and if the knight returns to c5, then there is rook takes c5, a very nice exchange sacrifice. D takes c5, queen takes e5, rook e8, queen f4, and here Magnus Carlsen said the move d5, d6 looms, and he felt only white could play for a win here. But he didn't play b5, he played rook c6, which he regretted later. Here comes Nakamura's counterplay, f4, g takes f4, e takes f4, queen e6 check. Nakamura played rook f7. He said he did not want to play king h8, which would be a worse version. He showed this variation, queen takes d6. And the point is that there's no queen g5 now, like in the game, because of queen takes d7, f3, and the queen just interposes on g4 to protect against the mate. Queen takes g4 is the only move, h takes g4, f takes g2, king takes back, and white is 2 pawns up with a winning position. So Nakamura wanted to have that counterplay with queen g5, and that's why he played rook f7 to shield the check. Queen takes d6 from Carlsen. Nakamura said that he had been more worried about rook c7, and he showed king g7, queen takes d6, rook a2, and he said he had some queen h4 tricks maybe. Black is very active and has some compensation for the pawn. The computer doesn't like this variation at all and says that instead of king g7, black should play rook a1 here, with the idea of rook takes a1, queen takes c7, with an equal position. But Carlsen did not go for rook c7, he played queen takes d6, and there comes queen g5, and now black's attack looks very dangerous. King h1 from Carlsen. Nakamura said that rook c8 check would have been better. He showed this variation, rook c8 check, rook takes check, king g7, and only then king h1, because after f3 you can then take on f3. Carlsen was shown this variation later and said, well, what about knight e5 then? Well, the answer after knight e5 is that with bishop e4 or bishop g4, white can miraculously hold this position, but it looks very, very dangerous in a practical game. It was nice that both players were interviewed separately. Normally when the players are interviewed together, they tend to overtalk each other, but now we could hear what Nakamura had thought during the game and then later what Carlsen had thought about. So back to 28 king h1, which was the move played by Carlsen, f3 and bishop f1. Carlsen said that during the game he thought this looked very nice for white, everything protected. If rook a2, then simply rook c2, and he was very optimistic here. But he had not judged this position correctly. Black played knight f6, and Nakamura said that he got quite optimistic here and that he thought only black could be better. Here Carlsen should have played queen g3, but he played the bad move queen e6. King g7, which was missed by Carlsen, and Nakamura said now white has to be very precise, and Carlsen said this is not pleasant anymore for white. So both players knew that the tide had turned here. Carlsen found rook c7, rook takes check, and king h6, and Carlsen brought his queen back into the defense with queen e1. Rook a2, strong move from Nakamura. But before we look at that move, let's look at the alternative. Nakamura said that he thought about knight e4, and he said it's very lucky, Carlsen is very lucky that this doesn't work, and he gave the following variation: rook c2, then rook e8, and queen d1, and Nakamura said white holds it all together. That's why he did not go for knight e4. Carlsen gave another variation. He said that after knight e4 he would play rook c4. He also thought that knight e4 was a bad move because of rook c4, and then he said if rook a1, then white takes on a1, knight takes f2 check, king h2, and everything is covered. It's indeed a very beautiful picture, this. White is almost checkmated, but not quite. The crucial squares f4 and e5 are covered by the rook and the queen from white. Quite an amazing picture. But the computer makes fun of these two top grandmasters. After knight e4, the computer says we just take that knight, thank you very much. Queen takes e4. It looks horribly dangerous because of rook a1, but the computer does not sweat and just plays queen e3, pinning the queen. And after rook takes f1 check, the computer just plays king h2 and says that white is winning. Queen takes e3, f takes e3, and the move f2 does not make any sense because of simply king g2, and white will win that f-pawn and has a winning position. Quite interesting that knight e4 move. Both Nakamura and Carlsen had a different reason why it would not have been a good move, and the computer gives the most straightforward reason, which is not easy to find for a human because it looks so horribly dangerous. But of course the whole idea is to play queen e3, and suddenly the black queen is pinned, cannot move. Okay, back to the move played in the game, rook a2, with a rook e2 threat. If white plays a silly move like b5, then rook e2. The bishop cannot take that rook because of queen g2 checkmate. So the queen has to flee, and then the f2 pawn will be unprotected. Carlsen found the right answer, rook e7, preventing rook e2. And now Nakamura went for a drawing combination. He played knight g4, a piece sacrifice for perpetual check. Carlsen asked Nakamura after the game why he did force the draw this way and not play knight takes d5. But Nakamura said, well, then there is rook e5, queen d2, and he didn't feel that he could achieve anything here. He thought the game was a draw, and the computer agrees. After knight g4, Carlsen took the knight, and we got a perpetual queen h4 check, king g1, queen takes g4 check, king h1, queen h4 check, king g1, queen g4 check, king h1, queen h4 check, king g1, and after queen g4 check, the 40th move, the players shook hands, and this exciting game ended in a draw. It was not the only game that ended in a draw in round 3. As you can see, Kramnik against So, Vachier-Lagrave against Caruana, Karyakin against Anand, Aronian against Giri. Many of these games were very exciting, very interesting to follow, but they all finished in a draw. The standings after round 3, Kramnik and Nakamura still in the lead with +1, 6 players on 50%, and Anand and Giri with -1. Friday the 9th of June will be a rest day. Round 4 will be played on Saturday the 10th of June, and I will be here after the round to tell you what happens. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. I'm looking forward to your comments. And if you like the video, please spread the word and share the video on YouTube. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box, as well as the link to the Norway 2017 tournament, the playlist. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you very much for watching.